Good evening and welcome to the November 27th meeting of the Auburn Board of Selectmen. First, I would like to announce that this meeting is being recorded and ask if there's anyone else in the audience recording this meeting. We have the Worcester Telegram and Gazette who's making an audio recording, and it is placed right here on our desk. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our first item of business is public comment, and we have Mr. Ken Ethia, who signed up to discuss Granger Cliffs. Good evening, Mr. Ethia.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Ken Ethia. I live at 404 Leicester Street. I'm here tonight at a request of the late Cliffy Granger, who lived in town for 102 years and 3 months. Probably a month before he passed away, which is just recently. We always talked about the town of Auburn. He had a memory of a 14-year-old at 102. I never saw anybody like it in my life. But anyways, his family had a dairy farm on Prospect Street, 128 acres. It was mostly on Prospect, but it was also the Auburn Plaza. Before Route 20 came in, the pastures weren't separated. And when the dairy farm broke up, when Cliffy's grandfather passed away, the family gave 28 acres to the town of Auburn to be known as Granger Cliffs. It was used for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, I guess, as a park. And Cliffy wanted me to come to the Selectmen's meeting and ask why they hadn't used it since then, or would there be any kind of a possibility of using it. As Cliff described it to me, he had spent an awful lot of time up there, not only when it was part of the dairy farm and pasture land, but even after that when it was the park. And Cliff described it. He said that you could see a good part of the town of Millbury from up there. It's quite a beautiful place, and I guess I'm just here tonight to ask you the same question that Cliffy asked to me. Is there any thought of maybe using it, or walking trails or anything like that? And I was talking to Mr. Coyle, the town engineer, tonight, who tells me that there's a clear path, a road to it now. I know one of the stipulations in it, when the Granger family turned it over to the town, I've got everything at home if it was something you wanted to look at. They didn't want any automobile roads going through it, but I don't think there are any now. They wanted it, I think, just for exercise and for people to be able to walk through. With that, I'll just say thank you for hearing me out, and please think about it.
Okay, well, I think Ms. Jacobson may be able to give us a limited amount of information tonight, and then we'll get an additional report and make you aware of that. Ms. Jacobson.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Mr. Ethier. It is a spectacular piece of property. It's really beautiful. And the town owns that in addition to two or three, one small, so I think 4 total contiguous parcels right in that area for about 90 acres total. Back in, I'm going to say, late 2014, I met with the Mass Audubon and the Greater Worcester Land Trust, both of whom were working with Mr. Granger on potential use of his land once he passed on. And at that time, they had said that they would, they just wanted the town to consider a potential easement, whether temporary or permanent. That hasn't gone any further, but to access from the Granger property to the town-owned property to continue some walking trails. And we thought it was a good idea. We have had it on the radar screen, and interestingly enough, the Greater Worcester Land Trust reached out to me shortly after Mr. Granger's passing away in October. They contacted me to revisit the issue. And in order to get an easement onto the town's property, we were looking on where we would put that easement, and it would have to go to town meeting. And it was, at the time they contacted us, the warrant had already been put together. due to the timing of his passing, we weren't able to get a fall town meeting. And this is something that we are looking at with town council to see if it's possible and what needs to be done. But basically, it has been a consideration. We discussed it. The thought was for some type of walking trails to run the easement along the edge of the property with a buffer. So if the town wanted to do something else with it, it wouldn't preclude another use, but it would connect the parcels together and create a nice trail system. So we are looking at it. We've given it some thought, and we're actually looking at the legal aspects of it through town council.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in, Mr. Ethier. If I could request that we move up agenda item, 5B1. Is there a motion to move up 5B1?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, so voted. And we have Ms. Cosgrove here with us tonight if there are any questions on this. But Mrs. Jacobson, I know this is a Board of Selectmen general item, but if you could just talk to members about this and what we're doing here.
Certainly. Through the chair to the board members, as you're aware, Robert Post owns 3 parcels of land that are contiguous and not contiguous to one another. 2 are contiguous to each other, but all of them abut various Chapter 61A parcels that the town purchased in the spring of 2015. He offered to donate 3 parcels that were not under Chapter 61A land at the time, so the town didn't have any authority to purchase them. He did offer to donate them to the town. There was an article on the fall town meeting warrant this past October, and town meeting voted to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept the transfer of the deeds. And again, that a town meeting vote is needed to give the board the authority to transfer the deeds, whether you're transferring a deed out or you're accepting a deed in. So based on that, now we come back to you this evening, and you would still, regardless of the town meeting vote, now the board needs to take a vote to accept those donated parcels and accept the transfers of the deeds to the town. There are several pieces in your packet that were added to us by town council. First of all would be the motion, and I just want to make a note here that there are actually only 2 deeds, not 3, although there are 3 parcels. One deed, which is 160 Southold, is separate, and 159 and 161 were on the same deed. So you'll see 2 deeds, but there are 3 parcels. And in addition to those, to the motion, which I believe you should vote first, if indeed the board votes to accept the donation, then there is another document that the board would need to vote on and sign, and that would be for the tax abatement, which I would like to ask our assessor, Cindy Cosgrove, to just explain briefly why the tax abatement, because of the time of the year that we're in and what that actually means.
Cindy, could you just come up and join us up here? It's easier to hear you up here.
So while she's coming up here, so that document is in here as well. So in your packet, you'll have the motion, you'll have the 2 deeds that were prepared on behalf of the town by attorney Scott Wren. And again, this was prepared by him because attorney Bob Hennigan, who's our town council, couldn't represent both the donor and the town at the same time. So we had to split those duties for conflict of interest purposes. And attorney Scott Wren, we hired him as a local attorney to do the work. So can you just explain, if the vote goes forward to accept the donation, the abatement?
Yes. The timing of this, the taxes for the current year have already been committed, and as of the date of exemption, the property was on the tax rolls. So once you've accepted the piece of land, the Board of Selectmen has the ability to authorize me to prorate it and abate the remaining taxes for the year so that there'll be nothing due. The taxes are paid up to date, so we would simply abate them, and then we wouldn't have to pay taxes to ourselves at the end of the year.
So if I may, it has nothing to do with the donor, it's the town.
It's the town.
Town's responsibility.
Yes.
Okay. Do members have any questions for Cindy regarding the abatement? Okay. Is there a motion, and then we'll have discussion? Okay.
You want the motion first?
Yeah, and then we'll have discussion under the motion. Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen, in accordance with the authority granted to it by a vote on Article 24 of the October 24, 2017 special town meeting, accept 2 deeds, herein collectively the deeds from Robert C. Post of 170 Millville Street, Auburn, Massachusetts, which deeds have been delivered to the town manager and which describe and convey to the town of Auburn the land described therein. The deeds are accepted as a gift to the town without monetary consideration, and the board accepts these deeds with gratitude.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Berthium seconded. Under discussion, Mr. Holstrom.
Yeah, October 24th, the town meeting did authorize this board to go forward and accept these parcels. Instead of telling you what I really think, I'm going to say this has left a bad taste in my mouth. And it goes back to the property we purchased of 50 acres on South Hold Road that was 10% of the cost of what we paid for. And if we didn't pay for that land, then we wouldn't be strong-armed by updates of infrastructure and, well, anything to develop that property by Mr. Post and whatever developer he had with him. The 3 parcels we're speaking of tonight, the town of Auburn was also approached on as part of the deal of the 50 acres, and it was not part of the 61A, but the parties involved, Mr. Post, I believe, thought that this property was involved with the 61A, and that we should also buy it. Well, we found that we did not have to, and we were not legally obligated to. So this land was offered to us for sale back in whenever the date was. I don't recall the date now of when we purchased that property. But now it's a donation, and I think it's, by looking here, it looks like to get rid of the taxes and turn it over to the town for something he can't use. And that's all I'll say about it, other than I will not support this tonight. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Berthium.
Question, so without, if it didn't get approved, it would stay in the family, the Post family, and they would be liable for the taxes?
If it doesn't, I'm sorry, through the chair, yeah, if it doesn't get approved, it would remain with the property owner. It would be up to the property owner if he were to sell it. I don't know what his future plan would be. But as far as town purposes go, assessment purposes, it's not classified as 61A land. It's residential property. The total taxes on these 3 parcels were about $3,600 total for the 3.
And did I hear that it's not buildable? It's nothing that the town can sell later for?
No, it could potentially be buildable lots. One of them is landlocked. Number 160 is landlocked. But if number 160 were to be purchased, it would abut the remaining parcels that the town bought on the north side of South Hold Road. So it would no longer be landlocked. It would be attached to the very first parcel going down South Hold Road on your left. So there would be access to that parcel. As it stands now, it is not a buildable parcel. There are some wetlands on it, so I don't know how buildable 160 would be, but 159 and 161 potentially down the road could be home lots. I do want to point out that when the town purchased this land, and I believe that the notification came to us in August of 2014, the vote took place in December of 2014 to purchase the land through the 61A. In the, I believe it was in March or April, we actually, the board took a vote to borrow the money through a tax-exempt bond, which means that it needs to, it was a 10-year note, which means that under guidelines for tax-exempt bonds, for a minimum of the first 8 years, you can't convert that use to anything but the municipal tax-exempt status, or you pay penalties on having borrowed the money at a tax-exempt note. So the first 8 years, the property must remain as a municipal use. After that 8-year period, and certainly after the 10-year period expires on the bond, the town could look at other options, and at that time it could look at selling it as a house lot. There'd be nothing to preclude it, but right now we can't do that.
Thank you.
So it's, so right now, the way the land stands, it really has no significant value to Mr. Post. Even if he were to develop those lots, he would need to bring the infrastructure in, and he couldn't do that because it's municipally owned property, correct?
Through the chair, correct. It would be difficult for him to develop. I won't say he couldn't. It would be difficult. Right now, that is private. So I believe midway through the center line of Southold is owned by the property owners on either side. Right now, the town owns a good deal of that property
Yes.
on either side, but he would still own to the center line on these
Yeah.
two parcels. So to develop the parcels, he would probably have to do some infrastructure upgrades. I don't want to say for sure because we've never looked into doing that.
And so where we didn't purchase the land back at that time, Mr. Post still owns the property. It would be, cost him a lot of money to develop that property. And, I mean, I can only speculate that wanting to do this at the end of the year, there's a financial benefit to Mr. Post to transfer the land at this time.
And through the chair, if I can add, so if you look at the map that we provided when we actually took the vote to put it onto the warrant, when you're going down Southold Road from Curtis and you take a left onto Southold Road, the 159 and 161 will be on your right, and they are contiguous to one another and abutting the remainder of the parcels that the town bought. And then on the left side, again, you'd probably go down I believe it's 3 parcels, and then in the back would be this currently landlocked parcel. But all of these are then contiguous to the town's property. So if the town did take these as a donation, the town would have a larger contiguous area than it currently now has.
Mr. Berthium?
Through the chair, and just to confirm, and that would unlandlock what the town bought. Is that what we're saying?
What the town bought is not landlocked. Number 160 Southold is landlocked. So it would no longer be landlocked because you could, if the town owned it, it wouldn't be landlocked because we could access it through the town property. So it could become part of our property for preservation purposes, open space purposes, or some use in the future to be determined once the bond has been paid off. Currently, it is landlocked, but it would not be by the town if the town owned it, because it does tie into, it abuts directly one of our parcels. So it would create a lot in the shape of an L, with the town's frontage being on Southold and the back part of the reverse L being this number 160. On the other side, those 2 parcels are not landlocked. They are surrounded by town-owned parcels that we purchased as part of the 61A purchase, but they're not currently landlocked.
And
Mr. Berthium.
one last question, if I could. Is the town right now spending any money to maintain that land, and will they spend money to maintain this land until something is done, or is it just kind of growing?
The town does go in, DPW goes in twice a year, I believe. I'm looking at Mr. Mitchell. I believe we go in twice a year and mow the property currently, so we would continue to maintain it on an as-needed basis. We certainly don't go in much more often than that, but it's been at least 2, if not 3 times a year.
Is there anything else? Mr. Liberty?
So we would have to wait the 8 years to develop or do anything with these 3 properties the same that we would with the properties that were purchased by the town, even though these are a donation?
No, these would not have to have any kind of restrictions on them because they're not being purchased by the town utilizing tax-exempt financing. It was only the financing mechanism for purchasing the property, which at that time we purchased for $2.85 million. So we had to borrow for the $2.85 million. And the type of borrowing precludes anything other than a municipal tax-exempt use. These parcels being donated wouldn't have that restriction on it that you get from the banks and the bonding agencies.
Thank you.
Anything else? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
A resounding no.
Thank you, Mr. Holstrom.
Through the chair, now that the board has voted, the next vote that we should do is, does it require a vote, Cindy, or could it just
Yes.
strictly be signing?
A
Okay.
vote and a signature.
So the vote would be, it is in the back portion of your package, the last 2 pages. There's the memo from Cindy to you dated today that just says, as she explained, fiscal 2018 taxes for the town have already been assessed and certified by the Department of Revenue. Now that the town has agreed to accept it, the board needs to vote to prorate and abate the taxes for the following properties, and that is on your second page. This is we did the same thing with the South Hold Road properties when we purchased them, I believe. We had to abate any that were 61A land, but I think we had to take a vote for some of those at the same time for abatements.
We've done it on a few properties so
Yeah.
far.
So is there a motion to prorate and abate the taxes for the properties gifted to the town of Auburn based on the date of the recording of the deed? And the properties listed, 161 South Hold Road, 160 South Hold Road, 159 South Hold Road.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Under discussion, Mr. Holstrom.
Yeah, I won't support this motion either, especially after the price that we expended for sale of the 61A property, and now for the owners to get a break on property and taxes not coming back to the town. I can't support this.
Is there anything else? Mr. Berthium?
It was my understanding through Ms. Cosgrove that we're not giving it back to the family, right? We're just taking it in to pay the tax at the end of the year. Is that?
Basically, the taxes to date have been paid. If we don't abate the taxes, then the town will have to pay itself the 3rd and 4th quarter bills. Literally, the town will have to cut a check to itself to pay the taxes. So we just abate it and change the status to exempt.
And through the chair, to clarify, the current owner, Mr. Post, will pay the taxes through the time that the deed transfers. It just when you're, similar to when you're closing on a mortgage or you're closing on a house, you pay the taxes up until the time that you no longer own that property. And then when it transfers to the town, it's really a bookkeeping issue because the town is tax exempt, so we shouldn't be paying taxes. And no longer would the property owner pay taxes past the date that they own it.
Mr. Berthium?
Is that date today?
That date will be the day that it gets recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
So the figures that we're looking at here are the annual figures, is that correct?
Those are
So
annual.
that's not what is gonna get abated.
No, whatever portion is left over.
So it should be something quite less than that, like probably at least half being, because we're going on a fiscal year, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
And through the chair, as you may recall, Mr. Post requested that we close on this property transfer by December 31st. So Attorney Hennigan, once the vote is taken, we have to wait the requisite, I believe, 48 hours to certify the vote, or 72 hours to certify your vote has been taken, and then he can go and file the necessary paperwork at the Registry of Deeds. Mr. Post will sign the deeds that you have in front of you, transferring them to the town, and Attorney Hennigan will take them to the registry and file it. So I would say it would probably be around December 1, if not early next week.
Mr. Berthium?
Is it in the town's best interest to go a whole nother, make sure it's done by the 30th, but not do it at the beginning of December, but later on in December?
It's just a matter, through the chair, the taxes on this, as I said, I think the total amount of the taxes was $3,400 for the year for these 3 parcels. So you're looking at a small amount, really probably a few $100s difference to wait until that late date.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
And through the chair, we are sending down the actual vote to sign. Thank you.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, Jeff is here for 6A. And then I think Ken is either maybe for 6B.
Thank you. So we also, I see Mr. Mitchell waiting. If I could have a motion to move up agenda item 6A.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Ms. Jacobson.
Through the chair, I'd like to have Mr. Mitchell come up, Assistant DPW Director, just a standard vote to declare certain property as surplus. And if the board has any questions, Mr. Mitchell is happy to respond.
Members have the list before them. Are there any questions on the list? Mr. Holstrom?
Yeah, through the chair. Jeff, these two Fisher truck mount, these aren't trucks, these are just the mounts for the trucks?
plows, yeah.
Okay. That's all I had, thank you.
Just
Mr. Berthium?
through the chair, have any of these had to be replaced, or are we just, did we buy new plows? I know we're doing a lot of private plows now and subcontract.
Any truck that we're purchasing, we are purchasing with plows, whether it's, the 1 ton or the 3/4 ton pickups or the 1 ton dump trucks or the larger trucks, they all have plows. These are plows that were left over from trucks that were surplus previous. We kept them, we used what we could for parts on other plows, and this is just stuff that's left.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, if I may, the 2 excavators and the flail mower, which is an attachment to the excavator, those will be traded towards one machine, which is a mid-size in between the 2 of these. One of these is too small, and the other one is a larger machine that you actually have to have a Class A license to move it from site to site. So the one that we purchased is in between, so we can still do it with a Class B license, so we don't have to have a specialty license in order to move it.
Mr. Berthium?
Along that line, so we have to surplus it in order for you to trade it, is
Yes,
that?
yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we find the 13 pieces of equipment that are in such state of repair as listed from us to be as surplus equipment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? So voted. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Mitchell.
If I may also, this is the second round. We found an online auction company. It's called Auctions International, that we had very good success in the last round of equipment and vehicles that we surplused. Actually, we were able to sell everything, which in the past we've either A, had to scrap it, or B, we put it out to sealed bid, which we got stuck with some of the equipment with the sealed bids, but we actually put those up. It's an online auction, and we got decent money for all of it.
Excellent.
So, we can look at that for any other, any type of equipment or materials that the town owns. They surplus, they auction everything. So they come in, they take pictures, and they list it on a certain time frame, and there's no cost to us because the buyers actually pay the fees, the auctioneer's fees, so there's no cost to us.
Excellent.
So we get what we ask for, or whatever the bid is.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for being so proactive.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
And if I could just ask if we could move up one more item, because I have a feeling that Mr. Ethia may be here for this. Could we move up agenda item 6B?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda item is moved up. So we're now on the update on the cupola and the dome at the high school.
Thank you very much. The reason I wanted to update you is I received a couple of calls on this recently, I actually have a meeting with somebody who wanted to come in and talk about it this week, and Ed Kazanovich has also received a few calls on this. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to bring the board, update you on where we are on this issue. So just by way of history, back in on June 15th of 2009, the school committee voted to allow the so-called high school cupola, or as some call it, the dome, to be placed on school property fronting Auburn Street. And that vote specifically stated that the school department would not be responsible for any financial maintenance of that facility. So the Historic Commission has been working with town administration back to 2012, I believe we first started, to try to find a way to get this paid for and renovated. We've run into several roadblocks. We had lined up at one point the vocational school to do part of the work. And then we also had the sheriff's office lined up to do part of the work. That was back in 13-14. And we had to test it for lead paint, and it does have lead paint in some of it. So both of those groups were unable to volunteer their time because of the lead paint. So at that point, we went out and we sought a couple of different estimates from companies to come in and remediate it. Some will tell you that you need to strip all of it and remove all of it, and some will tell you you have to encapsulate it. We believe that encapsulating it may be sufficient for that, but the prices that we received were upwards of $10,000. So at that time, the Historic Commission was having some meetings out in the community, and they were looking to potentially see if anyone would be willing to donate, because an account had been set up some years back for the maintenance of the cupola. Since that time, we received a donation for $500 from Savers Bank, and another one, and I apologize, from a family in town for $15. And that added to the existing account, we have $1,485 that has been sitting in an account. Clearly, that was not enough, and still isn't enough, to paint and reconstruct part of the dome that needs to be reconstructed, which is basically the railing system. So in an effort to try to get this moving, earlier this summer, we met with Bill Coyle, DPW Director, Ed Kazanovich, and myself to try to figure out how we could abate the lead paint issue without spending $10,000. And what we came up with was having our two very talented, two or three actually, we have three in the unit, of our DPW facility management unit, go to classes and get the certification for lead paint. It's a lead paint certification. That will save the town having to pay an outside firm that has that certification to do the abatement. Once we do that, they would be able to go in and scrape, encapsulate, and paint and refresh it. It still leaves the railings that need to be redone. So what we would like to do, and a meeting was held this afternoon with Mr. Ethier, who's the chair of the Historic Commission, and Caleb Moody, the building commissioner, as well as Bill Coyle, DPW Director, and Ed Kazanovich, the assistant town manager. They met today to talk about whether the Historic Commission would be supportive of our efforts to try to get this done in-house through the lead paint certification internally. And then Mr. Ethier offered to reach out to Bay Path again at this point and see if maybe they'd be willing to rebuild the railing portion, the wooden railing portion. If not, the backup plan is for DPW to do that over the winter. They would be able to do that in their workshop. And again, in the spring, once they have the certification, they can encapsulate and or scrape whatever portions they need to of the lead paint and actually get the project done, hopefully by summer.
Great. Are there any questions on that? Mr. Berthium?
Excuse my ignorance on that. I haven't been down, obviously I've been down by the dome 100 times, thousands of times. Is there a sidewalk that goes to the dome? What is the use of the dome besides the fact that it's preserving the dome? Is there any use whatsoever? Are there chairs, or what's there?
It's a very attractive monument to the dome from the high school. Many people wanted to retain it because of the historic elements of it. I know Mr. Ethier actually went and spoke about it at the school committee meeting back in 2009 about the need to keep that. So there are people that walk through there. I believe there is a bench there as well, and there is a small walkway in that area. The calls that we receive and have received, especially over the last couple of months, people just seeing it, and it is, the longer it goes, the worse the condition is of it, and it is an eyesore for a beautiful structure. It doesn't really have a practical use other than a visual aesthetic. It's attractive. We actually highlighted it in the Drury Square vision plan because it is a part of Auburn's history. So it is a historical piece that we want to display properly, and we want to make sure we maintain it. Again, at the time, the last few years, we've been looking at a cost of some $10,000 and didn't have that right now. We think we can do this project depending on whether, if Bay Path does it or if the DPW has to pick up the project. We're thinking all told $2,500 for all the supplies, equipment, and lead paint certifications and things that we need to do.
Could I just add one thing?
Yeah, if you come up, Mr. Ethier. We want everyone to hear what you have to say.
Well, first off, it's anybody that's ever looked into President Roosevelt during the Depression, that was one of the projects that people in town were starving, and they would work 3 days a week because there was not enough work and a lot of people, and they would work 3 days a week on projects around town. I could name all of them, but you don't want to hear about all of them. But so it's really special, I think, in the town. These people that would work 3 days and have some money for the family would also get food from the fire barn, just to keep the people from starving to death. And that's one of the many things they did around the town, and I think it's really important to the town. As Ms. Jacobson said, it's a beautiful structure. And the thing that I'd like everybody to know, that once this is all done, the plan would be to have the sheriff's department come in, be it every first or second year, and just put a fresh coat of paint on it. And that would be the cost of the materials for the paint, and maybe you buy them some pizza and give them something to drink. And those people, I'm on the board of directors at Waters Farm, and I'm also on the board of directors at the museum on South Street. And we've used the people from the prison, the jail, I guess you call it, and they're not, they're decent people. I just recently, they were at Waters Farm, and they're not hardcore prisoners or anything like that, and they actually get an incentive for the work they do. If they do a nice job and the sheriff's pleased with them, they can get a recommendation for a job when they get out of there. So they take pride in what they do, and I think it would be a win-win situation. Once all this work is done, like I say, every year or probably every 2 years would be more realistic, be the price of the paint, and like I say, maybe some pizza or something just to keep that maintained. And I think we'd have the town treasure there forever and looking nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ethier. Mr. Berthew.
I just want to, add that I wasn't looking to take it down. Nobody's more proud to be an Auburn dandy than I am, but I don't want it to be an eyesore. And I thought originally, and I know we couldn't do it, originally it was going to go on the new high school, and now it's off to the side, and I kind of had envisioned it being the roof of a nice gazebo or something to that effect. So my concern is that we get it to be safe and not an eyesore as fast as possible. And it sounds like we're leading in that direction, so.
And through the chair, if I can add, per the school department vote in 2009, there is one more step to this, but once we get all the pieces together, we are required to go back per their vote to the school committee, which has to vote on any repairs or maintenance that are made to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ethia, for the ongoing history lessons you provide to us. And Ms. Jacobson, thank you for that update. I know there's been some buzz out in the community about the condition of the structure, as well as where the money was and what, happened with the money that was donated, and whether there was lead paint. There is, there isn't, so thank you for the accurate information.
No, you're welcome. I want to thank the Historic Commission, too, for keeping this on their radar screen. It is an important project for the town, and I think we finally have a strategy that will work financially. Thank you.
So, going back to our agenda, we have no presentations or public hearings. We have no communication, so we're back to Board of Selectmen general items. And in your packet, you'll find the 2018 annual liquor license renewals. This is the remainder of the list. There are no outstanding liquor license renewals to come before the board. And they have been reviewed by the treasurer collector and the DCG with no issues indicated. Is there any discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll
Mr.
make a
Berthium?
motion to approve the license renewals, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all the conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with conditions stated by the DCG on the licenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carpenter seconds it. Is there any discussion under the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? So voted. And moving on, under gift acceptance, we have a donation from Penrose Properties in the amount of $4,800 to repair the roof at Mary D. Stone Building.
Through the chair, I want to just, first of all, thank Penrose Properties and explain to the board what this is. As you know, Penrose Properties was selected by the town as the preferred developer for the 2 elementary school properties to redevelop them into senior affordable housing. And as you probably also know, because we've mentioned it before, the buildings are in, they're starting to be, there are some concerns with the roof. And certainly on the Mary D. Stone, the Julia Bancroft, not as much so. But a couple of years ago, we had found some water in Mary D. Stone. So working with Penrose Properties, they, on their own cost, brought in a contractor with our permission to take a look at the roofs to see what condition they were in and how we could potentially help preserve these structures until such time that we transfer the deeds and ownership, which again, it's a little bit further down the road, because they have to get all their state approvals first to get the funding to do the purchase. So the contractor came back and thought that the Julia Bancroft roof was in decent shape. We just need to do a couple of things on the inside that DPW is going to take care of. The Mary D. Stone School needed some slates replaced, and the estimated cost for this contractor to do the work was $4,800, and Penrose offered to pay for that service. So we wanted to recognize them for doing that and accept the donation, and the town would then enter into the contract with the roofing company to do the work on the Mary D. Stone School, hopefully before it gets cold and we can get it buttoned up for the winter.
Are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Berthium?
I have a question.
Sure.
So with the contractor, that will be a not to exceed 4,800, or is there
There's
gonna be
through
an
the,
oops factor?
it's a contract for $4,800. There, in that contract, there are potential overages that they might find. You never know until you get up there. And at that point, we would have to talk to Penrose Properties about extending that dollar amount and what needs to be done. But everyone was fairly confident that for $4,800, they could get those slates replaced that need to be replaced. Their primary concern is to preserve the historic part of the building, which is the brick portion that you see, and that's where the more severe roof issues are.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the donation of $4,800 with gratitude.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. We have no proclamations. Discussion on the December meeting schedule. We are meeting on Monday, December 11th. Our next scheduled meeting after that, because of the holiday, would be Tuesday, December 26th. is it the 26th or 20, Tuesday, December 26th. We have nothing that has come in for any hearings as of yet. I don't know what people's holiday schedules are. Obviously, if something were to come before the board that would need our attention, we certainly would meet, but as of right now, there's nothing that will need our attention on Tuesday, December 26th. So I'll put it out there as to whether members want to tentatively not schedule that meeting, and if needed, we would schedule it. Mr. Holstrom.
Excuse me, if there is nothing going on, we haven't got anything, just to come in and say hello and wish everybody a past Merry Christmas, I don't think there's any reason for us to be meeting on the 26th, and so we'll meet on our usual in January and leave it open so that if we do have something come up,
Yes.
then we'll have a 26th meeting, and I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Is there a
I'll second it.
So is there any discussion? Did anyone else want to add anything to that? And I'll just say what we've done in the past, our annual license renewals will be, with the exception of the liquor licenses, will be now coming in. And what we've done in the past is had a tentative vote on any additional licenses that come in to approve them pending no issues. If they come in with any issues, then they would have to come before us in January. If there's nothing else on that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Thank you. We've taken care of town manager item A, which is the surplus. Town manager B, which is the dome. The senior resource fair, Ms. Jacobson.
Through the chair, I know we mentioned it at the last meeting, but we wanted to mention it again. It's going to be a great event for the seniors in this community. It's Friday, December 15th from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And we have several providers and vendors that are going to be there with tables to provide information to seniors on things ranging from caregiving to veterans benefits, to local resources, tax abatements and credits and work-off programs. We have, again, an enormous list of both local, regional, and state providers that will be there that day. And we also will be offering free blood pressure screenings. The police and fire will be there, are talking about being safe in your home and safety issues, and potentially discussing bullying and fire prevention activities. So it's a great event. I just want to point out, it runs from 9 to 11:30, but there's no need for seniors to be there the entire 2.5 hours. The vendors will be there. So as the seniors can, come up to the senior center and stop in, visit the tables that you feel are appropriate. Hopefully you get to all of them, and it's an ongoing thing for 2.5 hours. So we're really excited to be doing this, and we thank the board for suggesting that we put together something.
Great, thank you. I don't see anything else on your
sorry.
agenda, but do you want to give?
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Do you mind? I'm
please,
sorry.
go
I
ahead.
should have added one thing. We will be offering free transportation to the center should anyone need it. And we have posted this on social media, on our website, on Auburn Community Television, but I'll say the number in case anyone's listening. You can call 508-752-9283 to register for this event and reserve your ride 2 days in advance. We need to know 2 days in advance. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No problem. But I believe that we have a very special event coming up this Friday night. Do you have some information on that?
We have our annual tree lighting this Friday, December 1 at 6 p.m. And it's, as always, it's at Fire Station Headquarters at 47 Auburn Street. And we have the Auburn High School Marching Band and the chorus, the Swanson Road Intermediate School Choir, Honor Choir, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. The Bay Path Regional Vocational High School prepares the best cookies that you've had, and we provide coffee and cocoa. And special guest, the best special guest of all, Santa Claus, will be arriving, rumor has it. And also just want to thank all the different people in the community and groups in the community that help us every year. It's really a great community event. If you haven't been before, it's just a tremendous family family evening. And again, we have, it is outside, right at the tree, and we'll light the tree right outside the fire station. In inclement weather, we do serve the refreshments inside the fire department, but hopefully there won't be any inclement
Yeah,
weather or
looks like-
any snow.
Looks okay so far.
Yep, so thank you.
So, do you have anything else?
All set.
And there are no tabled items. There are no Board of Selectmen member items unless someone has something tonight. Oh,
Motion to adjourn. Oh, you've got the
hold
minute.
on, no public comment. And then we have the minutes of November 13th. Are there any corrections or omissions? Seeing none. Mr. Holstrom, did you have a motion?
Yes, I did. Oh, you want to know what it is? Adjourn for the night.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are
Thank you.
adjourned.
Good
Thank
night.
you.